Part 3. Finally, the activities documented herein were effectuated under the implementation of several presidential executive orders that authorized the use of behavioral economics testing in order to experiment with various financial transaction processes regarding access to public resources provided through the Health and Human Services system. The executive orders listed under the appropriate president point to the abuse of executive privilege in authorizing numerous commissions and appropriating numerous powers to organizations to effectuate a large scale drug criminal enterprise that facilitated the actions conducted by the others mentioned in the suit. Consideration should additionally be given to U.S. versus Orena, 32F 3D 704, Second Circuit 1994, which states that the existence of factional disputes within a RICO enterprise do not necessarily indicate that enterprise no longer exists. That Barack Obama is a member of the Democratic Party and the majority of the above mentioned crimes took place under a Republican controlled administration does not negate his culpability or the culpability of any other member of the Democratic Party that might be implicated through consideration of the above. Additionally, EO 13708 authorizes the extension of commissions he established to operationalize his participation in the criminal enterprise until after his term of office ended, demonstrating his intent to remain involved in the enterprise during the time frame outlined herein. That Donald J. Trump is a member of the Republican Party and that the previous administration under which the elements of the criminal enterprise were operationalized were under the purview of the Democratic Party does not negate his culpability in the above-mentioned criminal enterprise. Indeed, the perceived factionalization between the Democrat and Republican parties are precisely the means by which the criminal enterprise is further perpetuated, and executive orders initiated during the 10 days of the illegal detention herein discussed provide further proof of abuse of executive privilege in perpetuating the criminal enterprise. I just 3 days ago, within the last 3 days, recounted how on June 1st of 2020, there was a report that was due after Trump had implemented an executive level commission regarding influenza immunizations and vaccines connected to influenza. And the report was due on June 1st. And rather than providing an accessible report on that specific commission, which, by the way, had been established before the COVID-19 outbreak was allegedly beginning, but around the time that certain other elements in its development and distribution were escalating, that there was some sort of politicking going on around jurisdiction in terms of who had authority. And there was an intentional effort to obstruct an appropriate reporting or public announcement of a reporting to meet that deadline, and instead a simulation of a type of kidnapping scenario where one was supposed to acknowledge the World Health Organization's priority in addressing and setting policy regarding COVID-19. That also happened to make a sort of proxy regarding the NRA. And now, the inverse of that, right? The racketing, the gamesmanship is that apparently the day that the 30-day severance of the announcement or the announcement that President Trump made to terminate the United States' funding of the World Health Organization happens on a day of a major DoD contract regarding biopharmaceuticals that also correlates with the first day of this 10-day conference on sustainability, as if not only is there an attempt to address command issues connected to this biological warfare that nobody's acknowledging as biological warfare, but also to address outstanding obligations incurred as part of the Paris Climate Accords that are part of this biological warfare and are not being acknowledged as such. Appearances of factional disputes do not necessarily indicate the enterprise no longer exists. Unfortunately, though, we're not just talking about illicit patterns of distribution of pharmaceuticals, including psychotropics, as a means by which to influence people's behavioral patterns in order to compel various consumption patterns and or potentially engage them in some sort of escalated risk behavior, perhaps violent or even connected to acts of terrorism. We're literally talking about speculation on mass murder effectuated through biological warfare. I believe that this still stands, and that considering the original request for consideration as a RICO suit, including in consideration of anti-money laundering components of the terrorist and what is it, the Anti-Terrorist and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996, you need only to prove two instances within 10 years, which means that the appeal period and the statute of limitations, as long as they maintain a competitive marketplace for leveraging mass murder using drugs and biological weapons, has not passed.